Welcome back to the channel. It's the Retro Rollback, and this video is tinged with sadness, as a tea time TV institution for British school kids all across the 80s and 90s is on its way out. Again. Erinsborough is the Melbourne suburb where the sun always shines and there's no shortage of drama. Since 1986, millions of Brits have tuned in to follow the lives of the residents of Ramsay Street. Neighbours is undoubtedly one of Australia's most successful TV exports, and has even spawned a string of acting superstars and pop stars. Join me in a journey through the years of Neighbours, from its inception to 2025 and its potential end. Don't forget to pop your favourite Neighbours moments and thoughts on its demise in the comments section down below. Okay, off to Ramsay Street we go. Our journey takes us back to the early 80s and an Australian television executive called Reg Watson. Reg was responsible for the birth of UK TV soap Crossroads, before moving back to his native country as the head of drama for Reg Grundy Productions, where he created many popular serial dramas, amongst them Sons and Daughters and the worldwide hit Prisoner Cell Block H, before getting to work on Neighbours. He formed the concept of Neighbours from his time in the UK, and cited Crossroads and Coronation Street as the main inspiration behind the idea. He wanted to create a soap following the everyday lives of families living in a close-knit community, and it was always the intention of Reg to tailor this show for both Australian and British audiences. The concept was originally rejected by Australia's 9 network in 1982, but eventually taken up by the 7 network, who commissioned it. With a budget of $8 million, production on Neighbours began in November 1984. It was a fairly modest production at first, only 3 households and 12 core characters, which included Stefan Dennis playing Paul Robinson, the only original character that remained into 2025. Other characters included Helen Daniels, played by Anne Haddy, and Alan Dale, who played Jim Robinson. The programme got off to a good start in its native Melbourne, but not so well in Sydney, and as a result the 7 network decided to cancel the show in July 1985, only 4 months after its launch. But all was not lost. 7's rival network 10 immediately bought the show, and it continued to go from strength to strength. Although new sets had to be built, as 7 destroyed the old ones to prevent network 10 from using them. In 1986, BBC One bought the rights to the show as they made changes to their daytime schedule, and Reg Watson got his wish as Neighbours made its debut in the UK, starting from the beginning with the pilot episode being screened on the 27th of October. The show aired at 1 on weekday afternoons, and very soon gained a large loyal audience, with up to 18 million tuning in regularly, which at the time was more than the entire Australian population. Soon afterwards, TV executives at the BBC saw the potential draw of the programme to Britain's teenagers and started rerunning the early afternoon episodes at tea time, just in time for the kids coming home from school. And it proved to be a masterstroke, as Neighbours' storylines became the talk of British school playgrounds through the late 80s and 90s. None more so than the romance and marriage of Scott and Charlene, arguably the show's most famous storyline, and the one that made household names of Kylie Minogue and Jason Donovan. The show was peaking at 20 million viewers by the early 90s and carried on in its tea time slot. However, the peak had passed by the early 2000s and its popularity was beginning to wane. And with the launch of The Weakest Link on BBC Two in the same time slot, Neighbours was finding itself being overtaken in the tea time ratings by Anne Robinson's famous put-downs.
You are the weakest link. Goodbye.
Added to that, the contract negotiations between the Australian production company who made the show and the BBC saw the distributor asking for significantly more money for the broadcast rights. This was a final straw, and the BBC said goodbye to Ramsay Street in 2008 after 22 years. It was a case of panic over for the fans though, as Channel 5 picked up the mantle and continued where the BBC left off. However, the downfall was more evident behind the scenes, as from the point of Channel 5's takeover, the majority of the programme's running costs were being shouldered by the British broadcaster, as the show's producer Network 10 found the programme was no longer commercially viable in the Australian market. In fact, Network 10 made the decision to remove Neighbours from its main channel over to one of its subsidiary digital channels, 10 Peach, in 2010. A decision that some say saw the death knell of the show in Australia, as it became out of sight and out of mind in some ways. In 2018, with the contract up for renewal, Channel 5 continued its commitment to Neighbours, but in 2022 made the decision to drop the programme. Neighbours was still regularly pulling in a UK audience of 1.5 million viewers, but with the British broadcaster paying the bulk of the show's production costs, Channel 5 had been losing money on this show since taking it on in 2008. This led the channel to concentrate the money saved on Neighbours to make more homegrown programmes. This decision, of course, meant that Neighbours wasn't able to continue, and on the 29th of July 2022, the producers pulled out all the stops and gave Neighbours a fitting send-off. Memorable actors and characters from over the years made cameo appearances, including Kylie and Jason, and the cast gathered on Ramsay Street for one final time to say goodbye. And that was the end of Neighbours. For 12 months. With audience figures still on a high as the series ended and a campaign from fans to revive the show, Amazon entered talks with the programme makers Fremantle to restart production with a view to the programme being available online only on its Freevee service, whilst Network 10 signed up to the return of Neighbours on its main flagship channel for the first time since 2010. The restart saw previous storylines adapted in a time-lapse form, with a slimmed-down cast at first with others coming back over time. But what didn't return were the viewer numbers. The lack of a mainstream platform and the scaled-down production saw many viewers drift away, and just like the BBC and Channel 5 before them, the cost of production was prohibitive. And in February 2025, the axe fell on Ramsay Street once again, with Amazon pulling out and announcing that production would cease in July, with the final episode being aired in November 2025. But will it be the end for good? It's a strange one because most TV shows are axed due to falling ratings, but in the case of Neighbours, it's the cost of production. There's clearly an appetite for the programme, but could another company come in and make it financially viable again? Or has the second reboot been the final nail in the coffin? Either way, it's a sad time for everyone who rushed home from school in the 80s and 90s to make sure they didn't miss any of the drama in Erinsborough, which is why we're talking about this on the channel. So did you rush home from school to watch Neighbours? Did you cry over Scott and Charlene's wedding? And did you continue watching Neighbours as an adult? Are you sad it's gone, possibly for good this time? And would you want it to come back again? So many questions. Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget, everybody needs good neighbours. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and give it a thumbs up, and hit subscribe as well for notifications of more retro content. So until next time, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you again on the next one.